The left is going off in a demented state of ecstasy over the final report issued by Charles A. Dufler, whom the Bush administration picked to complete a U.S. investigation of Iraq's weapons programs. Democrats are trying to pound President Bush on the fact that the weapons of mass destruction weren't found and contend the rush to war was possibly illegal. As usual, liberals believe the majority of the public who they educate can't read and are thereby prone to their deception. Just in the key findings introduction to the report alone, it reads, Saddam totally dominated the regime's strategic decision-making. He initiated most of the strategic thinking upon which decisions were made, whether in matters of war and peace, such as invading Kuwait, maintaining weapons of mass destruction as a national strategic goal, or on how Iraq was to position itself in the international community. Another point, Saddam wanted to recreate Iraq's WMD capability, which was essentially destroyed in 1991 after sanctions were removed and Iraq's economy stabilized, but probably with a different mix of capabilities to that which previously existed. Saddam aspired to develop the nuclear capability in an incremental fashion, irrespective of international pressure and resulting economic risks, but he intended to focus on ballistic missile and tactical chemical warfare capabilities. The Iraq Survey Group judges that events in the 1980s and early 1990s shaped Saddam's belief in the value of weapons of mass destruction. In Saddam's view, WMD helped to save the regime multiple times. He believed that during the Iran-Iraq War, chemical weapons had halted Iranian ground offensives and that ballistic missile attacks on Tehran had broken its political will. Similarly, during Desert Storm, Saddam believed WMD had deterred coalition forces from pressing their attack beyond the goal of freeing Kuwait. Weapons of mass destruction had even played a role in crushing the Shia revolt in the south following the 1991 ceasefire. The report continued. The former regime had no formal written strategy or plan for the revival of WMD after sanctions. Neither was there an identifiable group of WMD policymakers or planners separate from Saddam. Instead, his lieutenants understood weapons of mass destruction revival was his goal, and their long association with Saddam and his infrequent but firm verbal comments and directions to them. Now, of course, the left is screaming that Bush deliberately deceived the American people while he contends he was given faulty intelligence. Unlike the Clinton administration that was quick to blame an underling for a public gaffe, remember the bureaucratic snafus? Bush wasn't ready to distance himself from the many men and women who were crawling around with the roaches, putting their lives on the line to gather intel. That's called loyalty. But it's true that the CIA, British, Israeli, Russian, and Egyptian intelligence all got the weapons of mass destruction thing wrong. But before you blame President Bush for not getting it right, I'd like to remind you that he was in good company that got it wrong years ago. Bill Clinton said, "One way or another, we are determined to deny Iraq the capacity to develop weapons of mass destruction and the missiles to deliver them. That is our bottom line." And later he said, "If Saddam rejects peace and we have to use force, our purpose is clear. We want to seriously diminish the threat posed by Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program." His Secretary of State said, "Iraq is a long way from here, but what happens there matters a great deal here. For the risks that the leaders of a rogue state will use nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons against us or our allies is the greatest security threat we face." His national security advisor said he will use those weapons of mass destruction again, as he has 10 times since 1983. U.S. senators sent Clinton a letter advising him in the strongest terms to take out Saddam and his weapons of mass destruction. "We urge you, after consulting with Congress and consistent with the U.S. Constitution and laws, to take necessary actions, including, if appropriate, air and missile strikes on suspect Iraqi targets to respond effectively to the threat posed by Iraq's refusal to end its weapons of mass destruction programs." The future House Minority Leader said, "Saddam Hussein has been engaged in the development of weapons of mass destruction technology, which is a threat to countries in the region, and he has made a mockery of the weapons inspection process." Madeleine Albright had more. "Hussein has chosen to spend his money on building weapons of mass destruction and palaces for his cronies." Senators later sent a letter to President Bush. There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein has reinvigorated his weapons programs. Reports indicate that biological, chemical, and nuclear programs continue apace and may be back to pre-Gulf War status. Saddam continues to redefine delivery systems and is doubtless using the cover of an illicit missile program to develop longer-range missiles that will threaten the United States and our allies. A liberal senator said, "We begin with the common belief that Saddam Hussein is a tyrant and a threat to the peace and stability of the region. He has ignored the mandate of the United Nations and is building weapons of mass destruction and the means of delivering them." Even Al Gore chimed in. "We all know that he has stored secret supplies of biological and chemical weapons throughout his country." Senator Ted Kennedy, who's repeatedly called Bush a liar, said, "We have known for many years that Saddam Hussein is developing weapons of mass destruction." The Senate's senior, fiercest war critic, and former Klansman joined in. The last UN weapons inspectors left Iraq in October 1998. We are confident that Saddam Hussein retains some stockpiles of chemical and biological weapons and that he has since embarked on a crash course to build up his chemical and biological warfare capabilities. Intelligence reports indicate that he is seeking nuclear weapons. Where was John Kerry? He added to the discussion. "I will be voting to give the President of the United States the authority to use force if necessary to disarm Saddam Hussein because I believe that a deadly arsenal of weapons of mass destruction in his hands is a real and grave threat to our security." Another Democrat senator, "There is unmistakable evidence that Saddam Hussein is working aggressively to develop nuclear weapons and will likely have nuclear weapons within the next 5 years. We should also remember that we have always underestimated the progress Saddam has made in development of weapons of mass destruction." A very liberal congressman that represents Hollywood said, "He has systematically violated over the course of the past 11 years every significant UN resolution that has demanded that he disarm and destroy his chemical and biological weapons and any nuclear capacity. This he has refused to do." Senator Hillary got some. "In the 4 years since the inspectors left, intelligence reports show that Saddam Hussein has worked to rebuild his chemical and biological weapons stock, his missile delivery capability, and his nuclear program. He has also given aid, comfort, and sanctuary to terrorists, including al-Qaeda members. It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons." And finally, the man who would be president, John Kerry, said, "We are in possession of what I think to be compelling evidence that Saddam Hussein has, and has had for a number of years, a developing capacity for the production and storage of weapons of mass destruction. Without question, we need to disarm Saddam Hussein. He is a brutal, murderous dictator leading an oppressive regime. He presents a particularly grievous threat because he is so consistently prone to miscalculation. And now he has continued deceit and his consistent grasp for weapons of mass destruction. So the threat of Saddam Hussein with weapons of mass destruction is real." All these people received the same pre-war intelligence that George Bush did prior to going to war, in some cases years before he took office. It's easy to jump on the bandwagon and call someone a liar because it'll make you feel good. Just make sure you know the company you're in.